Right, good afternoon everyone, thank you for coming. We're recording this so all the parents can watch this at a later date, those that couldn't be here this afternoon. So when we come to the questions and answers, if you ask a question and I repeat the question, it's not for any other reason than I can then make sure the parents can hear the question that I'm answering. It's been quite a challenge organising Blackwell this year than it has been in previous years. Because quite late was when we found out that it was going to be open, but also we've tried to ensure that children in year 6 haven't missed out, because what we didn't want is children in year 6 not to have had that experience. Because residential visits, trips are absolutely wonderful for the children, and for them to miss out, we thought it would be a real shame. So we've got more slots booked than we would normally have, and we'd only normally be working with 1 year group. Having 2 year groups has made it a little trickier, and try to get sort of an idea of the numbers so we can then allocate children to particular slots has been trickier. So we haven't yet allocated until we're sure who's coming, because we want to make sure we organise the groups as best we can. But the Meadows has been going to Blackwell for a number of years, all the years that I've been here. How long would it be, Mrs. James? 10 years. So we're going to a venue that we know well, and we know the staff well. We have a good relationship with them. And the idea of a residential visit really is to build teamwork and to build relationships between the children and also with staff. And the children do get a lot from it, but I know, having done plenty of these meetings over my time and having done plenty of residential visits, I know as parents, particularly if it's your first time, there's always a worry about what it's going to be like. And it's very easy for us standing here where we've done so many to kind of think, well, everything could be okay. Well, actually, you need to know that as well. So you need to be able to see what's going to happen and ask questions. So Blackwell, make sure I press the right button. So who are they? Well, it is Blackwell Adventure that's run on behalf of the Scouts since 2005. So 25,000 visitors per year, obviously not last year. Non-profit organisation, so costs are kept to a minimum, and we pass that saving on to you. So we try to keep the cost down as much as possible. It's in the centre's in the village of Blackwell in Bromsgrove, 5 minutes off the M42. But it's set in its own grounds, very safe and secure. And as I said, having been there a number of times, I can vouch for the security that we got there. So this screen is not particularly big, but there's a team of people who work at Blackwell, and they're there all year round. They don't change. I'm trying to think of the chap's name. Mrs. James will remember it. Who? Ned, that's the fella. Thank you. Ned would normally come and do this talk, but he's unavailable at the moment, so we kind of linked his PowerPoint. So Ned would come and talk to you about it. We'll be having a similar talk with the children, but obviously different level. We'll be telling the children about more about the activities. So quite often people are worried about where the children are going to stay. So they've got the Manor House there. So the Manor House is on 3 floors, is that right, Mrs. James? 3 floors, and that's where the children stay. So they're all in that same building with the staff, the school staff, and then what happens is we allocate them dormitories, which I'll come to in a moment. So on the ground floor is where the children meet for activities or where there's meetings. There's the dining room. Then you go on to the next 2 floors, which are where the dormitories are. So it gives you an idea of the dormitories. Now, lots of different dormitories will sleep different amounts of children. What we tend to do is we talk to the children about having at least one person in that dormitory who they're friends with and that they get along with. And we do talk to the teachers, say we talk to the children, and then we organise those dormitories into groups that we think the children will get along with the rest of the children in there. So we do think very carefully about how that happens. So if we've, say for example, we've noticed a little bit of an issue in class with Fred and Johnny, we will put those together in a dormitory. And sometimes we know some combinations are not great. The children themselves might not know that, but sometimes they might say, actually, we think this would be better that way. So the dormitories are their single beds. Because of COVID, one thing they're saying is either bring a sleeping bag or your own. Is it duvet and pillow, Mrs. James? It is very warm, and what they do, the reason is they can't get all that cleaned in time. So if you've got a sleeping bag, that's ideal because it's dead easy. But don't think you've got to go and buy a sleeping bag, blanket, duvet, something like that, and a pillow and a bottom sheet. So they have the dormitories. Now, a bit later on, we'll show you some of the things that we'll do with the children about Blackwell. But essentially, that dormitory is safe space for the children. So we have the rule about not going in and out of other children's dormitories, and that's something we stick to quite a lot, particularly in and around when it's bedtime. They don't have a lot of free time. A lot of free time they do have would be structured about sort of playing outside. They go to the rooms if they need to get changed for something. But other than that, they spend very little time in their dormitory. We do encourage them to keep it tidy. That's easier said than done. I remember my son went on a residential trip to the Isle of Wight, and he went with a full suitcase. He came back with about 3 things. And where's all this gone? I don't know. We were chasing lost property for ages. He kept coming home with stuff that other parents had found. So we do try to get the children to be organised. As I say, that's sometimes easier said than done. So the photo here on the bottom right is the dining hall. So children go in there, have their lunches. It's a little bit like school. There's a place where they go and they're served. Then they go and sit down in the dining hall there, and they sit and eat the meals with staff, and staff will sit at perhaps particular tables with the children, and it's quite nice. The food, I've been there a few times. And we always make sure we go and get our tea as well. The food's good, so there's nothing to worry about there, and plenty of drinks for them to have as well. These photos show a bit more about the food. They don't all wave their arms every time they eat, but you can see the food's there, and it's all prepared on site by a catering company. So we would pass on any details of any dietary requirements, any allergies, and then they would adjust the menu accordingly. I normally go on the night when it's pizza, and sometimes they'll give me some of the pasta bake as well. Right, so accommodation. Now, as I said, dormitories. So on a landing, we tend to keep dormitories of single sex together, as in not mixed dormitories, but on one landing there might be 3 or 4 dormitories, which would all be all boys in those dormitories or all girls. What happens is children go in there, they settle themselves in. The most time they're spending there is when they're sleeping. What we do as a staff is we make sure that every child is asleep before we go to bed, which can be quite tiring because sometimes it's hard to get to sleep. But what we find is that when they're doing the activities, they're out in the fresh air, they are tired by the end of the day. And what we do is we pop the doors open with a bin. We have to keep telling them to be quiet, but of course eventually tiredness takes over. But we would stay patrolling those dormitories, just making sure that nobody's being silly, lights aren't on, torches are off. So they always come with torches. I don't think it's on the kit list, the torch. Yeah. Make sure the batteries are near to finishing. They get the torches out and onto the duvet. And we say bring a book as well, something for them to read. But they generally go to sleep very well. I can count on one hand since I've been here where we've had dormitories that have really been kept kept themselves awake for a long period of time. But obviously we talked to the children beforehand about the fact that everybody needs sleep because no one wants to be grumpy, teachers included. So as I say, we balance the rooms up so there wouldn't. We look at friendship groups. Some dormitories sleep is it 6, some are 8, aren't they? Yeah. So we kind of mix them up. It all depend on numbers. So how we do that will depend on numbers. And then they've got their bathroom there as well. So they've got a bathroom there, they've got a shower there. Sometimes it's difficult to get them into the shower, but most of them will use the shower. And the children are very sensible about the toilet as well. So when it's shower time, staff will be on the landing just to make sure that everyone's being sensible. But the time I've been there, children will be very sensible in the showers. So what we'll do, as I said, it's all about team building. It's all about building relationships with each other, and it's nice for staff to go as well because you can build relationships. And some people sometimes ask why are they doing this at the end of the year? Well, because at the start of the year, it's better you get the advantage of having those relationships built. So lots of team games where they've got to do things together, work together, solve things, which is really interesting. Watching the dynamics of different teams can be really, really interesting. But it's about cooperation, taking turns, listening, that we try to encourage. So tree trek, some of the things there's like an obstacle course. Some of the things are quite high up, there's climbing. And it's really, really interesting about who's okay at doing those things. Some children who you think, well, they're really quiet in class, but they see something like that, they're up there before you know it. Other children, less confident. Whatever happens in here, we will obviously encourage children to have a go, but we would never force anybody to do anything. So we've had children who've had a go. We've had children who've done some climbing, got so far so they want to come down. That's fine. But we do try to encourage them to have a go and try to overcome their worries. Indoor climb, so that's the indoor climbing wall. So again, people will do that to various levels. Some people stay very low down, others will be up there like a whippet, right to the top. But it's all very safe. So you can see they've got all the safety gear, the helmets, the safety ropes, and all the people there are fully trained. Archery. So the archery again is one that's really interesting because there's a lot of skills that go into it. But the children really do enjoy that because it's one of those things that they very rarely get the opportunity to do. So the multi-scramble, that's just a big net for them to climb over. But obviously a multi-scramble sounds better, doesn't it, than just a big net to climb over. And again, they'll have a go at that, go over the top. Again, whatever their confidence level is where they'll get to. And again, I've seen staff there going up alongside them, helping them, talking to them, encouraging them to have a go. But if a child really says, "Oh, that's it, I've had enough," then obviously they come straight back down. The crate stack, all those milk bottle crates, they are on a safety rope there, they're not just climbing on there, but that's quite good. You can see it's again about challenging themselves, so they do enjoy that activity because they get quite competitive about who can get the most milk crates. The zip wire, always my favourite, but I've never get a chance to have a go. But the kids love that. So there's a big zip wire that they go. So to climb up, it's quite big trees that they climb up, Mrs. James. Oh right, okay, there we go. So I was wrong. Platform, but the zip wire is one they do really enjoy. 3G swing. That's quite new, isn't it? That's not something. How were you with it, Mrs. James? Yeah, so there you go. So sometimes the children encourage the staff to get up there. The fan descender, which is probably one of the highest things there, isn't it? That's up there. I haven't been. Have you been on that, Mrs. James? So when I go there, it's normally on one of the evenings, and we do the orienteering, and they have to build their own rocket. And you've probably seen the things where you fill it with water and you pump it, and then the rocket shoots off, and there's a bit of a competition. And we have the orienteering, so I don't get to go on these things. Sleds and carts. So sledding is on the grass, and the other carts there. Only pedal carts, I'm afraid. I think the children would love to have go-karts, but it's only pedal ones for them. The campfire is quite nice as well. So it's quite nice when we go this time of year, because with the campfire, it's starting to get dark. It's not dark, but it's starting to get dark, and they sit round, have the campfire, and they have marshmallows. As I said, the orienteering, so that's again one of the other nighttime activities or evening activities after tea, where they go, and that's again getting them to learn those skills of navigation and working together, because you could have 4 people or 3 people in a team, one map, and they'll all look at the map, then they'll all go off in different directions, because I think that's where something is. So it's about stay with your team, work together. That you won't be able to read that, but that is an example of a plan. So everybody will get a chance to do all the things while they're there, and Mrs. James normally chooses the activities from those that we've seen. So they can't do. It's not trying to do all those activities they've got there, but you select them, don't you, Mrs. James, to which ones they do. And obviously, there's a lot of celebration about what they do when they're there. And like a lot of things, this isn't about who can get to the top, who can get the highest, who can do the most milk crates. It's all about improving on their own personal sort of achievements. I think we've got a road wasping, have we? Yeah. They get their certificate at the end, as you can see, celebrating that. So why do they go? Well, it's enjoyment. The kids really do enjoy it, and let's face it, over the last 18 months, it hasn't been particularly enjoyable for the children. But at any time, they do enjoy what happens there. Staff enjoy it as well. Everybody goes there to enjoy it. Nobody goes there not to have fun. It's a break for the children. There's no writing that they've got to do. There's plenty of fun things to do. So that's a really big reason. Confidence. So that comes back to that, encouraging the children. Sometimes they surprise themselves about what they can do. They might be scared of heights, but actually they'll have a go, and they'll get as far as they can. Or sometimes they'll say, I'm going to get that far up, and then they go a bit further, and then they're really pleased with themselves because they've done better than I think they would. Okay, trust and responsibility. So it's about trusting people that you're working with, that teamwork, being responsible for somebody else, also trusting them. Obviously within a safe environment, but it just means they get the chance to build those collaborative skills. Health and fitness, so they'll be running about outside most of the day, won't they, Mrs. James? So apart from, Mrs. James said, apart from when they're eating and sleeping, they'll be doing things. So it's very nice because it's an active couple of days for them. And right from when they get there, they obviously get there, take their bags up to the rooms, and then they're out doing things, aren't they? They've got team games, so we don't waste a second. So assurances, so that the centre, as you can imagine, is accredited with activity safety, part of the HSE, and they've got a quality badge for outside learning. So it is a centre that is got the right accreditation. It's not going to be somewhere where we just take them because it's cheap. They've got all the right stuff. They take safety very importantly. The children will get lots and lots of talks about safety every time they do an activity, and they'll always have that drummed into them about being safe, thinking of others, and that's part of them learning to be responsible. Again, that's quite difficult to read, but we will talk to the children about the visit. I've said the biggest reason to go there is that enjoyment. Everybody wants to enjoy it. So we will talk to the children about expectations of behaviour when they're at the centre. So it will be things such as, you know, wear your seatbelt on the coach, follow the rules of the centre to keep yourself and others safe, follow instructions given by a teacher or instructor. Sometimes those instructions, well, a lot of time, those instructions about safety, you have to follow them. Only bring items that are on the kit list. So, you know, I've been on all various trips and residentials, and, you know, you've had to confiscate lots of stuff that they've bought that's not on there. You know, so mobile phones, no. Tablets, no. If they want to take photos, get disposable cameras, and then your children can have the joys of having to go to Boots to get them developed and see what photography used to be like when we were young. Be punctual and prompt arriving at all meetings and activities. So nobody wants to be waiting around for someone to turn up. So we ask them to be prompt. I mean, that we give them a lot of prompting on that, and we go around them up, but we try to get them to be responsible. You've got to be there for that time, so make sure you are there. Not take food and drink into the dormitories, because obviously, you know, we don't want food all over the place and down the back of beds in people's bags. So we ask them not to do that. Stay in my own dormitories is a really big one, because we don't want the children running in and out of dormitories, because then that's when people feel that, you know, it's my dormitory, you're not allowed in there, it's safe for me. Other children will not be going in there, and that's probably the rule that's broken first, isn't it, Mrs. Jones? That's the thing that's probably broken first. Someone's been in my dormitory. So we talk to the children a lot about that, about keeping out of other people's dormitories. At night time, it's very simple, because we're about, staff are about, it doesn't happen. But occasionally, if they go up to get changed or whatever, we have to have conversations with the children. We don't necessarily always follow them up to make sure they're keeping that sort of rule, because they have some independence and learn that themselves. But it's a very strict rule that we stick to, and we take it very seriously about other people being in somebody else's dormitory. Make my bed every day. Well, if you've got a sleeping bag, that's a bit easier, isn't it? You've got to leave it where it is. But we do ask them to try and keep their bed tidy and keep the room tidy. So, you know, I've seen all sorts of things. You can't imagine some of the dormitories I've seen in my time, and things everywhere. So we ask them, you know, not to leave things on the floor. But you can guarantee you'll go on the last day, you'll do a search of the dormitory. There'll be boxer shorts down the back of a bed. There'll be all sorts of stuff everywhere. So we try to get them to make sure they look after their own stuff. And that's what we say. Don't send them in anything expensive. Don't send them in £100 trainers or tops or tracksuits that you'd be upset if they got damaged, ripped or lost, because as I found out to my cost with my youngest son in the Isle of Wight, they can literally come back with nothing. So when asked to go to bed, do so immediately. And that's really about, when you're asked to go to bed, obviously we'll be telling them not to go to bed, they will do that, but go to sleep. And that's, the first night's often the worst because they're excited. The first time away from home, oh, you know, we're here with all my friends, they're excited. The next day, they're normally a bit more tired and they're a little bit better. Be considerate and helpful to all of the members of my group and to the teachers and staff that are there. So think about others as well as yourself. So we'll talk to the children about our expectations. And the last bit there is just about the children understanding that just because they're at Blackwell doesn't mean that, you know, we wouldn't ring parents and say, you know, little Freddie's been doing this, he's been doing that. And it doesn't mean that, you know, if there is serious behaviour, then, you know, we'll be phoning parents to say, you're going to have to come and collect them. Or Mrs. James would phone me here in school and I'd go and collect them. I have to say that's never. I can't remember that happening at all on not just here, but on any trip that that I've been on. And you know, that is something that we talk to the children at length about before they go, about expectations. I mean, more than anything, we want it to be enjoyable for everybody. So if one or two people are not making it enjoyable for everybody, then is it right that they should be there? It's not really, is it? We want people to have a great time, come back with smiling faces. So that will be a lot of talk with the children around that, and they'll understand what our expectations are. Now, okay, so as I said, this is one Ned would normally show with the children. We normally have children here as well, but obviously in these times we can't. We'll do this later with them, but he'll then get them excited. I see this; they tend to get excited for going to Blackwell. So I've talked quite a bit now. I've also asked Mrs. James here as well. She's more of an expert on Blackwell than I am. As I said, what will happen is we have staff that tend to go who've been before. So Mrs. James has been a lot of times. Mr. Kings, as said, he's happy to go. He's been there a few times. Mrs. Hand, Mrs. Satchett is happy to go. Mrs. Barnes-Smith. So plenty of staff will be there to go with the children. I think Mrs. McGann and Mr. Todd. And then what happens is myself, Mrs. Bishop, and now it'll be Mrs. Ali will pop along to see how they're getting on one of the like pizza nights. That's the night we tend to go. We'll stay there, do some activities. We normally stay there to about 9-10 o'clock to just give the staff there a bit of opportunity to have some respite while we try and get the children off to sleep. So I've talked a lot. Has anybody got any questions? No questions, Susie. Miss Sturge, go on, hit me with it.
I'd like to know, when children at bedtime,
yes,
will they themselves be able to read story as you would do at home?
Would you be able to what? Sorry.
Sorry, would you be able to, read children's story as you would do at home?
Mr. James?
At bedtime, that's what we do.
Obviously,
My request.
to get through that many children reading the story
It's not. My sister.
if we had the option to, we would be obvious.
I mean, there is the dining hall, so
Yeah, we could do a group.
it will depend on what time they finish activities, I think, if we get the opportunity to, but it would be something that will be done as a group. And it's mainly the dynamics of the layout on the ground floor. There is obviously a lot of space taken up with the kitchen. There's the drawing room. There's the foyer where they all gather to have a message, and then there's a dining room. There isn't sort of a communal room, but we can see about doing that in the dining room. But sometimes it will depend on what time things are finished. We'll do that. Any other questions? Yes? Right, so what happens is, I should have mentioned that, shouldn't I? I didn't mean to mention that. Mrs. James, you didn't remind me. So on each landing, there are, is it 3 rooms? 2 rooms? A room of 3?
A double room and a single room on both floors, so staff will be in their own rooms. But I am very like sleeping in my residential, so I need children.
Yeah, someone turns over on the floor above Mrs. James wakes up. What happens is children will be told that if they're upset in the night, to go and knock on the door of a staff member's dormitory. So they're on the same floor as the children, and then they'll knock on the door and he'll wake up bleary-eyed and stagger to the door and find out what it is. Normally, it's someone who's feeling maybe a little bit sick or a little bit homesick, and we would comfort the child. Obviously, if a child was really upset, we would do whatever we can, because I don't think anybody wants a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning. So your child's not happy at Blackwell. Generally, from my experience, things like that tend to happen earlier in the night, just as they're getting ready to go to bed. And what we would do in that situation is, it's impossible to say, you know, we couldn't have every parent phoning their child. It just take too long. But if there's a child that's particularly upset, a member of staff, normally Mrs. James would phone you and talk to you, and then, you know, if both people thought it was necessary, we talk to your child. We've had children who've come during the day, gone home after they've done the activities, and they've come back in the morning. So, you know, there are various things that we can do, but I can guarantee there's nurture there, and the children looked after. And of course, if they're upset, we do everything we can to sort of get them feeling better about what's happening. We talk to them. So there's plenty of opportunities there if they're upset to get that nurture. But if it came to it, we would make that phone call. But hopefully not at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yes. So, yeah, there is, not in the manor building, but there's a member of staff on site there, first aid trained, who is on call. So there's always somebody there on call. If I go back to the manor house, which is one of the first slides, isn't it? Which it will be. Yeah, no, only in the manor house. No, that'd just be, well, children in pods, it would just be a nightmare. No, we stay everybody in the manor house. There's a side entrance, and that door's locked at night, but there's always somebody on site from the Blackwell team, and they're trained first aid. Mrs. James is trained first aid as well. So we've got plenty of people there to look after them. We don't need it very often, though, I have to say. Yes?
I'm a little bit concerned, because very, very picky.
Okay.
And I'm just worried that she'll say the rating should be up on the contact. She's not actually really anything, because she's not like,
well,
playing things.
Yeah, what we tend to, I mean, as you can imagine, they're catering for large numbers of children. So there tends to be things like pasta bags, pizzas. But if there was somebody who wasn't eating something, generally staff would be about keeping an eye on who's eating what.
That's not one of my main.
Yes, and then we would let the staff at the centre know, wouldn't we, Mrs. Jones? And in the past, I think, where children haven't eaten, extra something else has been prepared for them, hasn't it? So if they are picky eaters, we'll make sure they don't go hungry. Okay, so you won't have to rush into McDonald's when you pick them up. We will make sure they have something to eat. Yes. About the what? Sorry. Oh, the baby. Yeah. Right. Yes. Okay. So what they're saying is that normally when you go there, you've got a sheet on the bed, you've got a duvet covering the pillow. When we go, they would wash the pillowcases, the duvet covers, and the sheets. The beds are perfectly clean, so you don't need to worry about that. But what they're saying is because obviously of COVID, they have to wash the duvets and the pillows as well. So they haven't got the capacity to do that. So what they're asking is that if you bring your own sheet and blanket, duvet, pillow, and sleeping bag, then that's better. It means that they won't have a huge bill. Just on sleeping bags, you often get those sleeping bags that come in those little tie bags. Yeah. If your child's got one of those, send a black bag as well, because I have spent plenty of times trying to get those sleeping bags into those little bags, and at the first couple are fine, you don't mind, but when you're on your 16th, you think, oh my goodness. So what we say is, pack them a black bag, and we pop it in a black bag. Black bags are great as well, because sometimes you just want to, you know, the kids will just chuck their dirty clothes in there. What's always good is packing with your child so they know what you want them to wear when, you know, so they don't wear those pristine white trainers when they're going orienteering through the muddy lanes. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, what we'll do, do they supply us with menus, Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
So we'll get the menus and then we'll share those with parents. And if you think, actually, on that night, they're not going to eat anything, then we can talk to the Blackwell staff and they'll talk to the caterers. And we can ask you what sort of foods they would like or they will eat. Because we don't want anyone to go hungry or just have to survive on sort of puddings and water. So we'll do that. Yes?
When we need to finalise the actual dates that
Right, so once we know how many are going, because we've got up to three dates booked, but we might not need all three. What we're trying to do is not make sure that we're paying for all those three days, and then we're left having to pay for like 30 spaces that are not done. So I think Mrs. Good said, she sent out saying, it was at the end of this week or today. Okay, there you go. I knew it was at the end of September, but I've lost track of the days. So once we know that, we'll be able to finalise who's going when, because we've got obviously year 6, year 5, we've got resource base as well, and then we'll organise the groups. But it won't be a case of, you know, for example, you'd have all year 5s going and 6 year 6 children. We'll balance the groups as to how we need to. But as soon as we've got people saying yes, we're definitely going, we can organise the groups. And that, of course, isn't something we've had to do before because we've only had 1 year group who've gone, but this year it's different. Yeah.
Does the bad weather have an impact? You know, bad weather, but does it have a big impact on the activities?
Well, it all depends. I mean, if it's absolutely chucking it down, they'll do more things indoors. But you know, we ask the children to bring clothing that's appropriate. So as much as possible, we'll try to keep them outdoors doing things. You know, I've been there doing the orienteering, running around when it's raining. They go in, they put their wet clothes in the drying room, and they get them dried. So pretty much try as much as possible when it's safe. They would be going outside, wouldn't they? Yeah. If it's absolutely chucking it down, then only the hardened like Mrs. James will be out there on the zip wire. Yes. Medication, yeah, just medication. Let us know, because the form will go out. Let us know, and then Mrs. James is the dispenser of medication, and she's very, very good. Oh yeah, if it's cream, that's fine. But if it's like, if say for example, they've got to take sort of antibiotics, or they've got to take penicillin, then we would do that. Or if it's tablets, we tend to do that. But if it's cream and they can do it independently, then just let us know that they've got the cream, and then that'd be okay for them to do that on their own. Yes?
Can I ask the children who are located in those dorms, do they stay in that group for the whole of the time they're there, or do they get to mix with other children?
They will get to mix with the children, won't they, Mrs. James? They get the opportunity at various times to mix.
They're day groups, they stay as a group.
Day group,
Yeah, the day group. The night group was first group, and then the day group.
So, yeah, because often the groups in the day are larger than the dormitory groups. So do try to mix them out, and we do try to encourage that they mix with others at sort of meal times, and then the various activities that they're doing. They've got free time when they mix together. So their dormitory group, they won't do everything with that one group. That's it. Any other questions? Yes?
Just on the point of hydration, because my son will play all day and have some water.
Yes. Yeah.
Will you be making sure that they're able to have water, even when they're like, oh, will you notice when there's stuff on the
Yeah, there's opportunity throughout the days for Mrs. James to have drinks of water. We ask them to take their water bottles with them as well, don't we?
Some they've got their water bottle with them, there is water points all around the site, so they can fill up constantly. And we do remind them and
If you leave in a group, you'll be checking that they've had something to drink. Because yes, we know some children will go all day. Other children will kind of drink further. Yes. So they come back about 5 o'clock, isn't it? So the coach picks them up at 4. You've got to get the coach loaded, and then they get brought here, and it's about 5 o'clock by the time we get back. I'm sure one of the female members of staff will help with any long hair. Okay.
Sorry, so on the list it doesn't say shampoo and conditioner, but could they wash their hair if they got mucky?
Yes, but there wouldn't be drying facilities.
Yes, they're just drying.
Yeah. Right. I need to finish there because I can see Mini Meadows are lucky to get ready. So thank you all for coming. If you've got any other questions, either phone the school or send an email to inquiry, speak to Mrs. James. Thank you.